Hello, I'm Dan Batista, Executive Director of the Institute for Citizen-Centered Service, better known as the ICCS. Welcome to our webinar on our new Citizen First Analytics and Benchmarking Service. Thank you for joining our webinar today. Today's webinar will be presented by my colleague, Michal Jong, Manager of Research, Analytics, and Benchmarking at the ICCS. Michal will present an overview of our new service and provide you with a live demonstration. Michal has been leading our efforts to modernize our analytics and benchmarking service. Specifically, today he will speak to the work we have done with our partner, Pigeonline, to digitize our services and make them easier and simpler to use by providing quicker and more relevant insights into citizens' service experiences with public sector services. Before I turn it over to Michal, please note that we are recording this webinar and it will be available on our website in the next few days. As a live event, participants will be able to submit questions by using the Q&A function, which you will find on the menu up top. It's a little text box with a question mark. We encourage you to submit your questions throughout the presentation. Following Michal's presentation, we will do our best to answer as many of your questions as possible prior to the end of the webinar session today. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Michal, and Michal will now take us through his presentation and provide you with a live demonstration of our new service. Michal.
Thank you, Dan, and hello, everyone. So today, just as Dan mentioned, I will speak about our new online service, Citizen First Analytics, that introduces the next generation of CMT benchmarking. We've been working on this with our colleagues from Pigeonline over the many months leading up to this point, and I'm really pleased to be able to launch the platform at this time. In just a moment, I will provide a live demonstration of the new service and its capabilities. But first, for those of you who may be less familiar with the ICCS and what it offers on the research side, I wanted to provide a quick background behind the Common Measurements Tool, or the CMT, which is the survey instrument, the use of which will allow users to take full advantage of the Citizen First Analytics platform. So what is the Common Measurements Tool, or the CMT? The CMT is essentially a bank of over 250 questions in various formats designed specifically for use by the public sector. It's closely aligned with our other research, namely the Citizens First and Business First studies. And since its first introduction back in 1998, it has gone through a number of revisions to ensure that it stays aligned with the current industry standards and the evolving needs and requirements of public sector organizations. The CMT can be used across all levels of government, service areas, and service channels, and allows for a great degree of customization, since it can be used alongside non-CMT items and added to pre-existing surveys. And since it was first introduced, it's been employed by countless organizations at all levels of government, both in Canada and internationally. And I'll just mention very briefly that we do have a version of the instrument designed specifically for municipal or local governments called the Municipal CMT. So to its users, the key advantages of using the CMT include its methodological reliability, ability to get actionable insights, identify key drivers and opportunities for service improvement, and last but not least, and very much a topic for today's webinar, ability to benchmark the results against those of other organizations. And benchmarking analysis is very much a key component of the CMT service improvement cycle, which focuses on citizen service experience, where it's not just about collecting feedback, but about obtaining meaningful insights and identifying opportunities for service improvement. And using Citizen First Analytics will help organizations to do just that, to design and implement real improvements to service delivery, something that will then translate into higher levels of satisfaction on the part of public sector clients. And here, very quickly, you can see the table of contents of the CMT question bank. As you can see, it covers the key areas of service delivery that include the actual delivery process, access, communications, etc. And here I've listed just a few examples of core CMT questions. you can see right away that, once again, these address some of the key aspects of service delivery, including overall satisfaction, timeliness, access, fairness, and so on. And here is an example of a very short questionnaire composed solely of CMT items. This is actually a customer feedback card that may be used to get quick feedback relating to an in-person service experience. However, typically CMT surveys would be longer than this. Now, once a survey is designed and data is collected, perhaps using an approach such as you can see on your screen right now, the next step is analysis and reporting. And obviously there is a range of analytical options, but one that should definitely be considered is comparison of the results to those of similar organizations, because this can really help to identify any existing service gaps. If you see that similar organizations are obtaining much better performance results, that may be a signal that you may need to adjust your approaches. And so with this purpose in mind, the ICCS has been providing a benchmarking service to organizations in Canada and internationally for over 15 years now. CMT users have been able to submit their results to us, and you then send them a report containing a detailed question-by-question analysis. However, the old process, or the process up to now, the process to get the benchmarks could take a number of days and sometimes weeks, and the work was done entirely by the ICCS. The submitting organization would then simply receive a finished report as a PDF document. Now, in order to make the process much faster and to allow organizations greater control over it, we are now introducing citizen-first analytics, which will allow for self-service, which means nearly instant access to the results, as well as greater customization and increased number of analytical options. And the website is designed to be extremely easy to use. As you will see in a moment, it requires no prior expertise in research or related fields. So in just a moment, I will walk you through the steps involved in the process of uploading a data file and then analyzing the data and producing a report based on it. But first, I wanted to show you exactly what would be needed before we start. So here is an example of a typical raw data file as an Excel spreadsheet. And this is the exact file I'll be using in just a moment. And this, by the way, is not a real data file, but this is how survey data would typically be recorded, with question codes at the top and each row representing a single respondent. The values correspond to the selections made by the respondents, and most of these are on a 1 to 5 scale, which corresponds to the type of scale used by the CMT. And then we have the codebook that links the question codes to question wordings. This will be needed to match the questions from the survey with the items in the CMT database, and you will see how that works in just a moment. And this is really all we need to go through the process of uploading our data to Citizen-First Analytics, analyzing it, and then producing a report based on the results. But before I proceed to the Question-First Analytics website to give you a demonstration of its functionalities, I just wanted to invite everyone to visit the Citizen-First Analytics website after this session, and to potentially register for an account to get access to a demo of its features that will allow you to see the steps involved in using the platform on your own. The registration is really simple and can be done at the web address provided, analytics.citizenfirst.ca. One thing to note is that the data that you will see as part of the demo is not real actual survey data, so that obviously should be kept in mind. And of course, if you have any additional questions, would like to get more information, or would like to go ahead and subscribe to the service, I invite you to send me an email at the email address shown on your screen. So let me now go to the Citizen-First Analytics website and show you its functionalities. So please just give me a moment. Okay, so now this is the landing page that you would see after you log into the service. And the very first thing, if you log in for the first time, that you will see will be this pop-up screen, which will give you some options when it comes to learning more about the website. It includes guides that on uploading and cleaning data, on analyzing the surveys, or on just getting started. And if you need additional help, you can click on the chat box in the lower left-hand corner, and someone should be able to respond to your questions or to provide additional information in a very timely manner. But let me close it now, and let me guide you through the process of first uploading the data and then analyzing it and creating a report. So first of all, we don't have a data set uploaded yet, so we will need to go to the data set section of the website. You can see that there are two main sections at the top, projects and data sets. So if we don't have any data, obviously the very first step is to upload new data. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And in this, at this stage, we will have 5 steps to go through in order to upload the data and create a specific profile for the data that we will be using later on. And you can see those steps listed on the left-hand side. Right now, you can see all of them are not, they haven't been completed. But we are on step 1. So let me go ahead and upload our data file. I'm going to select the sample CMT dataset that I've shown you before. Let's rename it. Let's call it sample CMT survey 1, and then we can save it. And that's it. As you can see on the left, the first step, uploading the data file, has been completed. So let's go to step 2. This is where we will be uploading the codebook that I've already shown you before. If you don't have a codebook, you can download a template from the website and use it to quickly create your own codebook. However, we do have one ready, as you could see. So let me upload it here and save it. And that's it. As you can see on the left, step 2, labeling the data or connecting the data to specific wording of questions, has been completed. So let's go to step 3. Step 3 is about cleaning the data or standardizing the data. And this is a really easy step because the data that we are dealing with, the data, CMT data for benchmarking and the benchmarking database, uses a 5-point scale. So you will need to use that for the data that we are uploading. And obviously we would have already used that as part of our survey. So we've applied the 5-point scale to our question items, which you can now see on your screen. And I'm just going to save it. And that's it. We've now cleaned the data and we've completed the 3rd step in the process. So let's go to step 4. Now, on this screen, you can see 2 sets of items. On the left, you can see items from the questionnaire, from the data file that we've uploaded. And on the right, you can see the CMT items from the CMT database, from the CMT question bank. Now, we could match those items individually, manually, but there is one easy step that you can do here, and that takes you to suggested matches. So if you click on it, you will see that your CMT items, the items that match the CMT questions, are basically matched automatically. And all you have to do is go one by one just to make sure that they're good matches and approve them. So this is what I'm going to do right now very quickly. And
Michal, it's Dan. My apologies for interrupting. Can you adjust your mic? It sounds like there's friction or something. I'm not sure if it's coming from your mic, but there's some audio noise.
Okay, I apologize.
Sorry to interrupt you, Michal. My apologies.
Okay, sorry. Is this better?
That is. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Okay, so I'm just going to finish approving the items, and that should only take a second. There are quite a few of them, but again, it is a quick process. So once I've approved them, step 4 has been completed. So we've now matched the questions from our questionnaire with CMT items. And we only have one step left. And from the benchmarking perspective, this is really the crucial step, because this will allow us to create a profile for the data and create specific benchmarking groups that we will then use at the analysis and benchmarking stage. So on the right-hand side, you can see all the steps involved, and you will see that there will be check marks next to them as we go through this process. So the very first question is, who are your customers? Who are your clients? And you can see that you can select both individual clients or citizens and businesses and citizens separately. Let's go with citizens, and you can see the number of benchmarks for each in gray underneath each description. And then if we scroll down, the next item is, do you specialize in any of the following services? So this speaks to specific service areas. So let's say we are dealing with an organization that deals with finance and payments. So let's check that. But as you can see, the list is fairly extensive here, and it will grow over time. But if your service area is not included, you can always add it in the box underneath. So let's go to the next section on this page. This has to do with service channels. What are your primary channels of service? And I'm going to select telephone for this based on the number of benchmarks. And then the next section, where do you operate? Again, this is the basic breakdown between Canadian and non-Canadian organizations. Let's select Canada for the purpose of this demonstration. And then what level of government do you represent? I'm going to select provincial state, again, based on the number of benchmarks. And then the last section asks, what is the nature of your service? This is broader than service area. And this is, we're including this because in some instances, the service area may be fairly narrow, and there may not be a substantial number of benchmarks available. So we've decided to broaden it and create broader categories such as informational, relational, transactional, and so on. And we've also included brief descriptions for each to make it easier for organizations to identify the proper category. So let's select relational for the purpose of this demo. So we've now described the data. We will be using the information that we just provided in just a moment to create specific benchmarking groups. Now, but we're not quite finished on this page yet. We still have to provide some additional information about the survey. One of the information that is required are the dates for the survey. And let's say the survey took place over the course of the first week of July. So that was just completed. And then we need to provide a response rate. Let's say it was 40%. And then we have some additional fields. Let me go very quickly through them. The ICCS is based in Ontario, so let's use that. So let's enter population. Third-party delivery, let's say no. Data collector, let's use what I think might be a fictional research firm, XYZ Research. Survey frequency, many CMT users do their CMT surveys on an annual basis, so let's do that. Sampling procedure, let's say random. Survey language, let's say we had both English and French. Obviously, if a different language is used, the other option is available. And the last is respondent sources. So let's enter client lists. And then let's click on save. And that completes the process of uploading the data. We've now uploaded the data file, the code book, we've cleaned the data, we've matched the questions with CMT items, and we've defined the data. So we are now ready to go ahead and do the analysis and create a report. So let's create a new project. And since we've already uploaded a data set, we can simply connect it. And as you can see, the data set that we've uploaded shows up here. So we can simply check this, check the box next to it and connect it. And here you go. This describes the data that we've uploaded. So these are the 6 benchmarking groups that we will have. This is based on the profile that we've created. So as you can see, these are the exact categories that I've selected previously. And then we have the actual question items. As you can see, some of those are not CMT items, so those will not be included as part of the benchmarking process. But the CMT items have been matched with their equivalents from the question bank, and you can see them here. On the left-hand side, again, you see the question codes, then the wording from the questionnaire, and then the wording from the CMT question bank. So we now have the data. We can go straight to analysis. And the analysis really at this time has 2 stages. One is driver's analysis, and then actual benchmarking. So let's start with the driver's analysis. And it can take just a few seconds to generate the charts. So let's give it a moment. But we should have it momentarily. Now we do use regression analysis for the driver's analysis, and here you can see it. And basically what it means that each one of the items is we create a table that, as you can see at the bottom, describes a coefficient, and the coefficient represents the impact that each one of those drivers has on overall satisfaction. So the greater it is, the bigger impact each of those items has on overall satisfaction. And if you look at it right away, you can see that timeliness and competence, staff competence, are by far the top drivers when it comes to this specific organization or this specific data set. This is followed by staff going the extra mile, fairness, and accessibility. And this is very much consistent with the findings of our other research, Citizens First research, over the years. So this is a very quick way to identify those areas that are particularly important to the clients of the given organization. And then we take one step further. We use the coefficient, or the impact score, and map it against the performance score. So you can here see your basic priority matrix, which many of you who are familiar with our Citizens First research would also be familiar with. So essentially, the items closer to the top have more impact on overall satisfaction, and items further to the right have higher performance scores. So anything that ends up in that upper left-hand quadrant, obviously performance is relatively lower, but the impact is higher. So those are the areas of particular importance or particular concern for the organization. And you can see right away that there is one item that really sticks out as such potential concern, and that's timeliness. Timeliness, which obviously throughout our studies has been identified as among top drivers and top areas that should be addressed by organizations and jurisdictions. So immediately the organization will be able to see that timeliness is something they should be looking at if they want to increase overall satisfaction. And the other items, they're not necessarily in that same category. As you can see, we do label each quadrant. So upper right-hand quadrant, that's basically, those are basically the items that should be protected. So staff competence is there. Lower left-hand quadrant, we should monitor that area because it has lower impact, but also lower performance scores. And the items in the lower right-hand quadrant should be maintained because while they do have lower impact on overall satisfaction, the performance scores are quite high. And here at the bottom, you see you see the items that were used. So the dependent variable is the overall satisfaction score, as you can see. And then we have independent variables, which are the items that you saw in the charts above. So what we're going to do is we're going to save it to the report. And this is now done. And we're going to go to benchmarking. So let's just give it a moment. And here you go. We now have the benchmark summary, which is very much consistent with what we've been providing as part of our reporting over the previous years. So in this table, you see each item, each question item that we've uploaded. And then you see the score for the organization submitting the data. Then you see the rating. And in this case, you can see that the rating is always outstanding and it's in green. We do use color coding. So if it wasn't as good, it would be in yellow or even red. But in this case, the organization immediately knows that they are doing something right? Because the scores that they're achieving are higher and very often significantly higher than the averages for the benchmarking groups that you see on the right. So for instance, for timeliness, if you click on outstanding, it will tell you your mean is greater than the global mean, and the global mean is to the right, under all groups, and that includes all data that we have for this question. So the mean is different than that, and it's also, sorry, it's bigger than that, it's greater than that. And the mean is also greater than the mean for 5 of the 6 benchmark groups that we've created. So this organization is definitely doing pretty well. The only group where the mean is not higher, but I believe it's at the same level, is for relational services, but we only have 2 benchmarks there. So the organization immediately knows that when it comes to timeliness, even though it is an area of concern based on the priority matrix, they're still performing fairly well. They may want to look at it, but compared to other organizations, they're doing fairly well. And it's the same for the other question items. And as you can see, for each benchmark group, we provide the mean score for that benchmark group and also the number of benchmarks underneath, just to let everyone know how robust each group is. So let's go ahead and save it to the report, which should take just a few seconds. And here you go. Now we've done the analysis and we can go to the report. And this is it. This is the online report that we've generated. And the very first thing to say before I actually show you the report is that you can share it with your colleagues from the organization. You can send it, enter their email address here or copy the link and send it to them. Or you can click on the button next to it and export it to PDF. So, and then you can email it or share it in any way that you would like. But the report is also available online in this form. As you can see, here's the title, the date, the name of the survey, the name of the organization. In this case, it's the ICCS. And then the very first section is the benchmark summary, which I've described. Again, you can scroll to the right to see all of the benchmarking groups. Then the next item is, we've already seen it as well, is the drivers analysis, which will tell you what really matters to your clients. And then we have the priority matrix. Again, we've already looked at it. And then the bulk of the report is question by question results. Again, very similar to what we've been doing with our previous reporting. So this really goes into further detail. The benchmark summary that you saw in the beginning, it provides, for most organizations, we know it provides a very good overview of how they're doing. But very often they will want to get beyond that. They will want to see a little bit more. So for each question, we will include your basic frequency table. We will include the chart, the bar chart that corresponds to the frequency table, and this just describes the selections that respondents have made for that given question. And in this case, if you look at the top, you can see that we are talking about the timeliness question. And then for each question and for each benchmarking group, so for each question we will have 7. In this case, we will have 7 charts like this and 7 tables underneath. We will do a chart that will basically position the data from the organization, the result of the organization for that specific question, against the background of a specific group of organizations. So in this case, it's all the data that we have in our database. In dark blue, you can see the score from the organization submitting the data, and in gray, you can see the other data points. And in burgundy, the horizontal line, that's the mean. So right away, you can see that the organization, again, is doing fairly well. However, there are some organizations that are doing better. Now, those organizations may be from different service areas, from different levels of government, and it's just easier for them to achieve higher results. And that's why when we provide the table where we list information related to the data points, we provide a bit of a description about each one of those data points, where it's coming from. However, we never provide actual identities of organizations. The entire process is confidential and anonymous, unless an organization chooses to reveal their identity to other organizations. But obviously, that still wouldn't be included in the reports that we generate. So this is essentially the list of items included in the chart above. You can see in this case it's fairly lengthy because it includes all the data in the system. And here we have the next chart. Again, we are on timeliness question. And in this case, we are just dealing with services to citizens, to individual clients, external services. So we have a similar chart and a similar table. And then again, timeliness question and finance and payments. So this gets a little bit kind of more defined, more specific, right? So if it's an organization dealing with finance and payments, they may be interested how they're doing when it comes to timeliness against other similar organizations. So this may be particularly useful for them. Again, they're still doing fairly well, but there are several organizations from this service area who are doing a little bit better than this organization. So maybe that is indicative that there may be some improvement possible still. And again, this is really the rest of the report. So I'm not gonna go through all of it. Obviously, there are many questions included, and like I said, each one of them would have 7 different benchmark groups. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what would be involved, and this really concludes the presentation of what the new Citizen First Analytics platform has to offer, and especially how quickly and painlessly one can go from the raw data file that I showed you in the beginning to a detailed report providing actual insights, such as you can see right now on your screen. As you can see, it's really a matter of only a few easy steps, and it only takes a few minutes to generate a report like this, something that you can then share internally within the organization. I would just say, before I turn it over to open it up to questions, I would just say that we are already looking to make enhancements and add additional features to the platform, and are looking to showcasing them over the next months as part of subsequent sessions like this one. So please stay tuned. But in the meantime, if you are interested in subscribing, if you are interested in checking out the platform further, please feel free to contact the ICCS and me personally at the email address that I provided earlier, and I would be happy to speak with you and anyone who's interested in knowing more about the platform. And now I would be happy to answer any questions that we may have received.
Great, thank you so much, Michal, for that. I can't tell you, how impressed I am, and I have seen this demo several times now. And as you pointed out, Michal, just the ability to go from a data set and the cleansing of it to a final report, and of course, generating all that literally in minutes, if you will, right? And the power of that. So we are obviously extremely excited about this service and its move to a digital platform and the ability to have it easily available and accessible for us is certainly something that we're very proud of, and certainly as you mentioned, Michal, we're looking forward to continuing to refine it and improve it so that clients have really at their disposal a tool that meets all their needs. So with that, Michal, there are a number of questions that I do want to get to that have come in throughout your presentation. The first thing, maybe you could just, again, remind folks how they should go about contacting you, for further information. I know there's been interest in receiving the presentation slides, which I know that you can make available. And likewise, if people wanted to talk to you one-on-one with regard to the potential of this as a solution for the needs that they may have. So maybe if you could start with that, Michal, the best way for them to get in contact with you, and then we can run through some of the questions that have come in.
Absolutely. So feel free to contact me at the email address. I don't have the presentation right now displayed, but you can simply email me at the email address that I provided, which is michal.diong@iccs isac.org, or you can simply go to our website, citizenfirst.ca, and through the contact information, you can send us a message and it will be directed to me, and I will be happy to respond to that way. So I think that, that may be the simplest way to reach out to us, and we will be happy to respond.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michal. Okay, let's have a look at the questions here. So a number have come in. We'll do our best to try to get through most of them, and if we're not able to answer all of them, certainly feel free to follow up with Michal. So I'll start in the order in which they have arrived. The first question, Michal, was related to benchmarks, and specifically, this person wanted to know if we had basically benchmarks for all 200 questions that are in the code book.
No, the answer is no. Benchmarks are, first of all, benchmarks, the question bank, the CMT question bank contains questions in various formats. Basically, you can create a full survey using those questions. Some of them are open-ended questions, some of them are specific, have specific responses, defined responses, and so on. But many questions have 5-point Likert scale, and those are the questions that we actually use for benchmarking. So it would be those questions that we could actually benchmark through the system. Now, for some questions, we will have more data. For other questions, we will have less data. In some instances, maybe we currently don't have any recent data. So it will be different for various question items. What I would say is that we do have fairly robust amount of data for core CMT questions. At the beginning of the question bank, there's a list of 16 key questions. And again, they do speak to those key areas of service delivery. So timeliness, access, staff performance, and so on. And we definitely do have substantial data for those, and also for additional ones. But yeah, it will be different, but definitely not for all questions in the question bank.
Perfect. Thank you, Michal. This next question is somewhat related. It speaks to, I guess, the benchmarks that are available in specific sectors of the public sector. So, for instance, health and social services. So, again, there would be variations in what you could benchmark, again, depending on availability of data, correct?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly correct. For some service areas, we may have very limited data. For others, there is a lot of data. And again, organization, I would have to say that even for those organizations in the past whose service area wasn't necessarily represented that well, I know that that's why we introduced the broader categories. So relational services, transactional services, and so on, just to allow them to get meaningful insights, even though there may not be identical organizations in the system. So yes, we may not have all specific service areas represented in the system currently, but there are other categories where I'm sure most organizations would be able to which organizations should be able to use and still get meaningful results.
Excellent. The next question, Michal, I guess we could both answer this one, but I'll present it to you. What if you want to ask questions more than once per year and change some of the questions more than once throughout the year? So really, maybe you can, again, just address how it works with the CMT question bank and benchmarking, just a quick recap.
Absolutely. So we typically license the CMT for a certain period. So typically it's a year. So in that year, organization is free to use it as much as they want. So obviously, if you want to you have quarterly surveys, or if you want to have an ongoing survey, you can definitely do that. It would be stipulated, covered by the license agreement, and we are going to use the similar approach. And Dan, you may want to speak to that as well. A subscription model for Citizen First Analytics website, so that organizations, if they want to go back, maybe they've done another wave of research and so on, they would still be able to do so. It wouldn't be a one-off necessarily, but we are very open to working with organizations and looking at their specific circumstances and maybe creating a specific framework that would be working for them.
Right. Yeah, just to add to that, Michal, and it actually is a nice segue into the next question. Is there a fee for this service? So maybe I'll just start off. So yes, we wish we were in the business of offering services like this at no cost. That's not the reality. Obviously, this is about being able to reinvest in this type of service. So there are fees, as Michal just mentioned. We are transitioning from a model that was based on a licensing agreement to one that's subscription based, and typically that period of time is 1 year. We are working on what that pricing, what those pricing options will look like, but just again briefly, typically based on the size of the jurisdiction, a subscription could be, say, for the federal government, it could be at the provincial government level or at a municipal or regional level, or it could be, again, by individual department or agency, right? So there are various pricing options, but typically the model is subscription for 1 year. But as Michal said, we're more than happy to sit down with you to discuss what is the best fit and how we can work with you. The next question, I'm definitely going to ask Michal this one. I see software is in Excel. Can it be saved in SPSS or SAS? So maybe if you could speak to the format type of files.
Yes, absolutely. The answer is yes. Yeah, we do support other formats. I just used Excel because it was fairly easy, and it's obviously commonly used among some of our clients as well. And for the presentation's sake, I just wanted to include that. But yes, absolutely, we do support the formats that you just described.
Excellent. A question here, I'm guessing from one of our municipal colleagues. They want to know, Michal, how many Canadian municipalities have used or are using the CMT?
That's a good question. This is something that's kind of evolving. So over time, over the past couple of decades, yeah, I can't even tell you how many off the top of my head. It's not always that municipalities are. Sometimes they do a survey. Some organizations choose to do it, perhaps not on an annual basis, but at bigger intervals, which is fine. Other organizations do it more frequently, and so on. So I would say over time, we've had tens of, I would say It would be difficult for me to estimate, but I would say 50, 60 municipal governments throughout Canada, throughout over the past years and so on, have been using it, in their surveys and so on, if not more. Again, it would be difficult for me to. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but obviously, yeah, we do have municipal data as part of our system benchmarking benchmarking platform, and it's we definitely, especially with this, making it easier, more cost-effective for many organizations. We really look forward to having increased numbers when it comes to the local governments across Canada and elsewhere as well, because we think that there is a lot of potential there as well. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michal. Another question here regarding how data is collected, and I assume they're referring to a survey, I guess, modes of survey and data collection. So could you speak to that, Michal?
Absolutely. It's entirely up to the organization using the CMT. So just one thing that I should mention, we license the CMT, the tool. We provide the organization, the licensee, with the question bank, but they are the ones responsible for designing the survey and then collecting data. The ICCS is obviously available to provide advisory services when it comes to survey design and so on. But that part is really something that the CMT users are basically handling. And it's really up to them. It will really depend on, their resources and, the specific service and so on. It could be CMT could be implemented through the full range of different channels. It's been implemented through telephone channels, online channels, paper questionnaires, and so on. So it's really up to the organization using the CMT as to which channel is the best fit. Again, it will really depend on the resources, and sometimes it will depend on the type of service that they provide.
Excellent, Michal. Question here regarding demographics. Do we capture any demographics?
So
of any type, actually. Yeah.
The CMT question bank, yes, includes questions on demographics, and obviously organizations with using the CMT can add their own and so on. Now, when it comes to the current system, Citizen First Analytics, it's not currently included as part of the system, but this is definitely something we'll be looking at in adding as in future waves of enhancements and additional features, because we do know that there is a lot of interest in segmentation, in really identifying certain segments of population where perhaps they may not be that they experience services differently. We know that there is need for that, and this is something that we will be definitely looking at in future. Like I said, in the shorter and medium term, when it comes to new features and enhancements.
Thank you, Michal. The next question is somewhat related, and I think you've pretty much addressed it, but again, just to stress this, the question is with regard to gender and other diversity variables. Can they be included in the data and analyzed?
Yeah, so again, yeah, the CMT definitely allows you. There are questions that speak to that, obviously, but it's not necessarily part of the current database that we have for Citizen First Analytics. And like I said, we do recognize that there is appetite to have that something along those lines implemented, and we will definitely be looking at that in the future.
Great. Next question, being mindful of time here, still quite a few to get through. How recent would the benchmarking data be?
The data in our system currently goes back 5 to 6 years. So it's been collected over 6 years. We expect as the database becomes more robust, we expect that cutoff point will be decreased. Obviously, yes, we do eliminate data that is just stale. But yeah, the current cutoff point is about 5 years, just over 5 years.
Okay. Next question, and it's a good one because often we tend to focus on external clients, that being citizens. This one asks, can this be used for employee surveys as well? In other words, can we help those folks with internal surveys and analysis of those findings?
The answer is yes, and I can tell you that from the start, CMT has been used in internal employee surveys. Yes, absolutely, and we do have some data, internal data, data from internal surveys in our system right now. Most of the data is from external client surveys, but there is definitely some data that speaks to employee surveys as well.
Okay, next question here, and I'm going to jump down a bit because I think it's an important one. Do the questions that are used have to be exactly the same as your global questions for you to match?
They don't have to be exactly the same now, but we would want them. Well, our recommendation is that they be as close as possible. So that's why because again, you know, if you change the meaning of questions too much, that may affect you know, the comparability, right? You won't be comparing apples to apples. So we do allow some adjustments. For instance, for the sake of clarity, you know, sometimes it makes sense to add the name of service or the name of the agency to specify what is meant. Or sometimes, you know, there may be like slight language adjustments for specific group of respondents. But typically, we advise organizations to avoid going too far from the CMT wording, and we encourage them to submit their questionnaires to us prior to fielding if they do want to benchmark, for us to review them and let them know if you know, the questions, if they would still be able to benchmark those questions. So the basic recommendation is to change the questions as little as possible, but we do recognize that in some instances it makes sense to make slight adjustments. But you always have to be careful about changing the meaning of the questions, because then it really becomes an issue. And obviously, so that's the wording of the question. And obviously, as far as the scales are concerned, it has to be a 5-point scale at this point. So if the scale is changed, obviously that would be a bigger issue.
Great, thank you, Michal. Next question pertains to, I guess, finer resolution of reporting. Example, with regard to different areas, regions, is there an ability to see this type of customization in the display and the reports?
Well, yes. I mean, not right now, but this is again something that we will be looking at introducing in future waves of enhancements. So we are, yes, we are definitely thinking about something along those lines. So yeah, that's the basic answer.
Great, thank you. This one I think you've kind of addressed, but important to just go over it again. Can I upload data from our corporate survey tool?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah. Well, the basic answer is yes. If you've done a survey and, you know, if you've used questions which are close enough, at least, to the CMT equivalents to get matches, then yes, absolutely. I mean, that would be possible. But again, there would need to be they would need to be equivalents of the CMT items. So that's the only condition. Now, having said that, we do explore kind of expanding the service potentially in the future to kind of accommodate maybe questions which organizations are using that maybe go beyond you know, the current CMT framework, but currently the questions would need to be you know, basically equivalent to CMT items. So that's the only condition.
Okay, folks, just to let everyone know who's still with us, that we are running out of time, so unfortunately we're not going to be able to get to everyone's questions. However, we encourage you to send those questions into Michal. I know I'm going to be filling up your inbox, Michal, but certainly I know that you'd be more than happy to respond to the questions. And I know in some cases it probably requires more than an email. Probably a chat would be most helpful, given the detail of some of those questions. A couple more here before we close out today's session. This one asks, can I set up an internal benchmark for multiple office locations, for example?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if I understand the question correctly, you'd like to kind of segment your data based on different offices. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You can upload multiple data sets from different locations or different client groups and so on. Yes, absolutely. If I understand the question correctly. If not, please do follow up with me after the call, and I can definitely, provide additional information or based on that question.
Yeah, I think that's the correct interpretation, Michal, based on the question that I had in front of me. Next question, are the questions included in the regression analysis or only the global COM questions, I believe this is. So I'm not sure if you're able to answer that one, Michal.
Sorry, are the questions
included in the regression analysis or only the global, I guess it's not a complete question, communication question. So I think what they're asking is what's actually used, what does the regression analysis comprise, basically? Is it all the questions?
Yes, essentially, yeah, all the CMT items, yes, absolutely, yeah. Okay. So we use the overall satisfaction as the dependent variable. You need to use that in order for the analysis to take place. And the other items are used as independent variables. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. And the last question, and a very important one, and that pertains to the CMT and whether or not it is available en français aussi. So they're asking if it's bilingual, Michal.
Yes, the CMT is fully bilingual, and the website, the platform right now is available only in English, but yes, absolutely, we are working on making it available in French as well. But the actual question bank is available in French, yes.
Yeah, and we always certainly work hard to ensure that our services are available en français. Of course, given that we are still very much in the early phases of this work, it was presented in English today, but we will certainly endeavor to ensure that everything's available in French as well. Okay, with that, we're approaching the top of the hour. I just want to take this opportunity again to thank all of our participants today. Given the number of questions we received and the detail of those questions, I'm going to, take from that there is certainly a lot of interest in what we are doing and the work that you're leading, Michal. So certainly we're very encouraged. And today's webinar was really a means for us to introduce the new service and get it out there, and to invite you to reach out to us if you would like to demo it, if you have questions, if you want to better understand its potential and its use within your organization. So I would also like to thank, obviously, the star of today's webinar, Michal Jung. Michal, excellent presentation and demonstration of how the service will work. And I want to thank you again for just the leadership you've demonstrated throughout this project and getting it to this point. So fantastic work. So with that, I'm going to conclude today's session and wish you all a pleasant rest of the day. And thank you. And again, for further information, please visit our website or feel free to contact Michal directly. Thank you very much and have a good day.